Hello, welcome to a tutorial about how to set up Ableton and to make a preset so you can just load up Ableton and start creating your beats right away. To do so, we need to load all the VSTs, all the effect racks, the mixing part, the mastering part into this project, and then we save it as a template, and then when we go back and open a new project, we can just go straight into creating a beat. Instead of looking through our samples, looking through our VSTs, we just want them to be there when we load the project up. So it's a really nice way to be able to get straight into your music creation or something. So with no further ado, let's start, and we're gonna separate it to drums, bass, keys, and so on until we're finished, until we have loaded all the different instruments we want. So I'm gonna actually start with the drum rack. The drum rack is an insane thing. It's like, I think a lot of people use it to load their own samples and be able to play them on a MIDI keyboard or on your computer keyboard. But I'm gonna show you, if you don't know, this tip is just amazing. So I learned it from a friend way back and I use it all the time. So we can rename this to drum rack. And when we load a sample in here, if I press my MIDI keyboard here and arm the track, we can see I'm playing C1. So this would be a nice pad to have my kick, for example. So if I go to my samples, and I'm gonna go into my Digitact samples, because there I have already sorted all my drums and everything. I can open drums, I can open kick, and here I got all my kick samples that I enjoy. So what I could do is just load a kick to that pad and play it. The problem with this is if we open this project every time, we will always have that kick and have to go back and insert a new kick to change the sound. And I'm gonna make it much more simpler and much more fun. So to do so, we can actually delete that and we can start for an instrument rack. So the instrument rack, we can drop on this first pad, and here you can drop an instrument or a sample, and we're gonna drop some samples. So we're gonna go back to our samples and we're gonna take all the kicks in here and just drop them. Oops. And just drop them into the instrument rack on pad 1. And to be able to see them all, we can press this menu here, and now you can see we see all the kicks. If I play now the pad, I'm gonna lower. We're gonna hear it's gonna play all of them at the same time, and it's gonna be super loud. So don't do it. Before we do it, we're gonna go into chain here. Here you can see they're all selected on 0 to 0, and we can drag them out. So we're gonna actually do a trick here. We're gonna control them all, and it's a little difficult to touch it here. Control them all and drag them out all the way, and then we're gonna right click, disturb ranges equally. If we do so, you can see we have them separated from each other, and now if I play, we will hear the first kick, and I can just scroll through here and we can hear all the different kicks. And to be able to make this even easier, if you have a MIDI controller with a knob or something, we can actually MIDI map this scroller. So I'm gonna right click here on this and set map to macro. And here we have the chain selector, and we can just rename it if we want to be really organized to kick selector. And we can MIDI map this knob. So I'm gonna press MIDI and I'm gonna use my MIDI controller, change on a knob, and now when I play, I can just scroll through. So that's something that makes it much more easier to just use this drum rack, and instead of fiddling around with samples in the browser, you can just turn a knob. So I'm gonna set this up for, let's see, what do we have? We have kick, hat, clap, perk, snare. And I'm gonna make an instrument rack for each pad and just drop them like this. See you in a bit. Once I have loaded all the different drum samples I enjoy, I'm also gonna rename them down here to be able to make sure we know what kind of sample it is. Perfect, so now we have the drum rack set up and you should be able to just play around with them, and once you have created a MIDI clip, we can just scroll with the knobs to change out the sound. It's really simple and it's a really fun way of working with the drum rack. So let's step over to the next thing we're gonna do. Now I'm actually gonna use a drum VST. So I'm gonna go into my plugins and I'm gonna use Addictive Drums. In Addictive Drums I have a kit I really enjoy. It's the old school beat and also the mono kit. It's really lo-fi-ish, but we're gonna use the old school beat for now. Actually, it don't really matter. You can change the kit depending on what VST you have. You can change the kit and it will be working. So we want to send each output from the plugin to a separate audio output in Ableton to be able to send the different hi-hat, snares and so to different effects. So what we want to do is to create audio tracks, and we can duplicate this. Oh man, I think I broke Ableton. I smashed the duplicate buttons a little too much. Okay, we're back. So to be able to don't lose your project, we're actually gonna save this as well. So I'm gonna save this under tutorials, or actually I'm gonna save it under my templates. And I'm gonna call this, what should we call it? Beat Challenge. Just beat template. And make sure you always save it so you don't lose it, because we're gonna work for and set up a lot of things, so you want it to be saved. Okay, let's go back to routing the audio from the VST to each separate audio. So let's go into the VST. Depending on what VST you have, there will be different ways of routing the audio. In Addictive Drums, you have to go to where you have to go? Yeah, you just have to go to the kit, so you can see the mixer down here. And this arrow down here is the output one. So we can separate the out, pre-fader, post-fader, and let's separate it post-fader. So when you have like a really nice drum VST, you'll have like overhead, room, and bus, and you want to separate them as well, so we can take advantage of that. Once this is done, we can go into our IO panel, and on each audio track here, we can go into audio from, and we can choose Addictive Drums. And in Addictive Drums, we can now select each track. So we got all these tracks we need to route. So I'm gonna do this for each track. Once it's done, we can delete all these extra tracks that I made. Oh god. And we can start to organize this because we're gonna have so much thing in this project. It's really nice to rename everything so we know what it actually is. So let's rename them, each track for what output it is. So I'm just gonna copy what's down here and rename them. Then we also want to group these, so I'm gonna press Addictive Drums, select click, shift click, Control G for group, and we can rename this to Addictive Drums. And now if we play, we don't hear it because we have to monitor it. So let's do that for all the tracks as well. We can select them all and press monitor in. And the audio is really loud from Addictive Drums. So to fix that, you can use the faders inside of it, but I think we can also use the utility, which is one of my favorite plugins from Ableton actually. It's really lightweight for your computer, and you can just put it on the kick. We can turn down the gain like, I don't know, let's try like 12 dB, and let's listen. So now we are around -6 dB. We can push it even lower if we want to, but I'm gonna stay with this. So let's just copy this and paste it on. And you might wonder, why do we do this on all tracks and not just the bus, for example, or where all the audio comes out from? And you could do that, just put one instance of a utility on this track. But I like to do it separate, because maybe we start to realize that the snare is a little too loud all the time. And then we can just go into the snare and change the volume of that one. And why I'm doing it here and not these faders is because I like to keep all my faders at 0. So when we're done, we should have all the faders at 0, but still have a good level of sound. So let me change this back and listen to the drums. So yeah, there are a lot of samples there, and we can group these both. So now we have one is drum rack and one is Addictive Drums. So let's group them and call this drum bus. Cool, so now we can merge them both. We can use some of our own samples and some from maybe a drum VST. And I also like to make all the audio tracks a little smaller, so it doesn't take up that much space, like this. Use the same color. Perfect. So this was everything for this one, and we're gonna keep this in small parts because otherwise it will be like 1.5 hour long video. So I see you in the next one where we will set up the bass bus. Take care.